Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. I apologize for the delay. We've been having issues with the audio, and I did not make the adjustments I should have made yesterday. So I just wanted to apologize for that ahead of time. Now, before we get into anything, I do want to let everyone know that we are not doctors. So anything we do say is our own personal experience. Do take it as such. And if you have any thoughts or want to get into something, do your own research. Absolutely look it up. If you have any questions or comments or anything like that, by all means, throw them up in the comment section and we will engage them directly. And I got to say, this is a side note, I much prefer the pink lemonade for the
Oh,
electrolytes
oh,
over the
really?
lemon lime. Yeah.
I like the lemon lime.
Hmm.
Mhm.
It's interesting. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. Now, Matt, good to have you back.
Hi. Hi. It's Sunday.
It is Sunday. Semi-regular Matt is here on a
Yeah.
Sunday. I do want everyone to notice that I have a prototype on right now. It is soft. It's actually quite nice. It's gone through a wash now. It hasn't shrunk. And I'm just going to show you guys the back so y'all can see.
Oh, pick up the pace, chance.
Pick up the pace. So it's coming along. I am just figuring out the store still. We're going to get that sorted out very shortly, and you guys will be able to pick up these as well as the Do Your Best 3.0 mugs, which are also have pick up the pace on them. Very excited. So, the topic at hand before we get into that.
That T-shirt that you're wearing right now, did you order like extra massive, or are you just trying to grow into that T-shirt? What's going on there?
This is an extra large, and I'm normally an extra large in shirts. So it's a bit bigger than I had anticipated, but I do need to grow into it. So got to put on some.
I think the back of that T-shirt should say "Pick up the pace" on the squat rack and the bench, maybe.
Pick up the heavy weights. That's what it should be saying right now. Absolutely. And I am working on that too. So don't you worry. I'm going to grow into this shirt properly. Now, the thing I want to talk about today, the topic of the day is day ones. Day ones. And the reason I want to talk about this today is because Matt here joined me for the first day on the mats earlier this afternoon.
Nice.
So we're going to get into that. But I also want to talk about it as more of a larger concept because both Matt and Shaun, you guys have been through a lot of day ones. You guys have put those white belts on, you've strapped up, ready to go. I mean, we have lots of experience here. So I want to talk about those days as well, what they felt like, how you managed them, that kind of stuff. So first off, Matt, how was your first day of jujitsu?
It was fun. It was fun. New experience. Never done martial arts really in my life. Did like a couple weeks of Tai Chi, but that was about it. So this was interesting. Going in learning with not knowing anything beforehand. So like how to tie up a belt. I didn't even know how to do that. Chance had to help me with that one. But it was good. It was nice.
Any
Yeah.
any lessons right off the bat? Anything that you can apply forward?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, just the body positioning when somebody's on top of you, making sure you have a proper take away their position so you can manipulate it versus allowing them to take advantage of your position, like with the whole pushing the hips back on the body versus letting them get guard up on top of you and stuff like that. Yeah, it was good. And yeah, and honestly, I think one of the biggest thing was not to be afraid to just get into it. Like, just go. You know what I mean? Not like stupidly, but I mean, get like no. I don't know, like it was the day one. I had no expectations. I didn't know what was going on, and I just blindly went into it and got rolled around a bit. So it was fun.
I threw him to the wolves. It was a roll and review day. So what we do is we'll do like 3-minute rounds, and then we sit and we talk about it for a second, and then we go back to the rounds, and then we sit and we talk about it and we just roll for the whole class. So that was his first day introduction to jiu-jitsu. Any thoughts or questions for him, Shaun?
Yes. How many rolls did you get in, buddy?
I think we did what 4 or 5 3-minute sessions, something like that. like that was the sets, right? And then I think the first two individuals I rolled against, I think we did like 3 resets, right? And then the last two, I think like the last one was like 2 minutes in, and then the last one, we went for the whole 3 minutes, just on off each other. So
So, what kind of ranks were you rolling with through each roll?
Started with 2 purples and then went down to 2 whites.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the whole thing?
It was good. Like I'm going back. Like I think I'm going to go back to Chance's dojo. Like again, brand new. I don't know terminologies. And then I'm thinking I'm going to go to the one that's just up the road too, come September, just because school and stuff is like literally 2 kilometers up the road. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and it was a good community too. And that's I think a big part of it too was everyone was like, okay, no, let me show you something, or yeah, I'm good, or we can do this, and they were learning at the same time as I was learning. So it was an interesting give and take, back and forth.
Now, I'm curious, before you stepped onto the mat, you probably had some idea of how it would all play out, or you probably had visualized that maybe you're going to tie your belt perfectly and step onto the mat and just crush it, or maybe you visualized, I have lost my belt and I don't want to be here at all. Whatever you visualized, how did it meet your expectations, or the
Visualization.
Yeah,
Normally I do visualize everything that I do, but I think for purposely because this one, because I didn't want to come in all, I know some stuff, or like I went blind dumb, like what's a mat? You know what I mean? Oh, that's my name. Okay, yeah, cool. So I went in totally no expectations, didn't do any research, didn't. I think the only thing I knew was to ask Chance to bring the ghee, and I spelled that wrong too. So I'm a chef. I spelled it like the ghee, it's clarified butter ghee.
that's awesome.
So yeah, I went in this one totally no idea, totally no planning, totally no research, a background or anything, and it was good. It was refreshing in the fact that I wasn't prepared. I think we talked about that last time, where you or maybe 2 sessions ago, where you were saying throwing in that randomness, that non-standardization to kind of throw you off the loop, kind of thing. So
Pattern interrupted. Yeah.
pattern interruption. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I kind of like played with that one a little bit today and just went in blind and heck, let's do it.
And so now that it's all said and done, what lesson or what advice would you give to yourself, the Matt that hadn't stood on the mat? What would you tell the young Matt?
Oh, like 2 hours ago, Matt. I'm still processing like the whole thing too. Like the AAR in the brain is still kind of going through its paces and stuff like that. I think I did it right. I think it's really just getting and doing versus paralysis by analyzing stuff too, right? So yeah, I think it was I wouldn't change anything that I did today. Maybe my parking, but I mean, other than that, I think it was good to go. And bring a mouth guard. Bring a mouth guard. That was the other thing.
Yeah. I was pretty liberal with the rules. I just wanted to see how he would show up, and I said I'd bring him a gi, and it was kind of hilarious because he did message me. He's like, "Hey, make sure I'll be there tomorrow. Make sure you bring the gi," and it was spelled GE, and I was like, "What?" Because I was thinking of this. I wasn't thinking about jiu-jitsu. I was like, "Why am I bringing butter to the show? I don't understand." But yeah, then it all clicked in. I was like, gi. Oh yes, of course, the gi. But he did really well. I got to say, like he came in with, like I said, 0 expectations, and I sat him. We started fresh. I showed him a tap bump, and I'm like, okay, so your goal is to either submit me or make me tap out or hold me down or survive for the whole 3 minutes. You ready? And he said, yep. And so we tapped and we bumped and we went to town. And he did really well for a brand new. He's proprioception was pretty good. Like he was able to figure out where he was in space. And I was just ahead of him. So as a purple belt should be, right? It's the he consistently did really well. He would tap, we'd stop for a second, he'd take a breath, and we'd go right back at it. So it was it was really good. I enjoyed it. I had fun. Um, but let's get into other day ones. Or unless you have other questions or thoughts, Shaun.
Yeah, just if you can figure out what distance you want to talk to your mic, figure out that distance and then stay at that distance because you're really leaning in and spouting off when you're getting all excited about BJJ.
Raj, thank you for that. We do have one question actually from Tanya. Here we go. What's your ideal balance of letting a day oneer just mess around / giving them a mission? That's a very good question. Shaun, what do you think?
I think it depends on the person who is the day oneer. So to me, they're not just a day one, they're a unique day oneer. And each day oneer is unique from the one previous. And so it really depends on their energy. It depends on their intention. It depends on the vibe I feel. The moment that I connect with someone, I have a pretty good sense of what they're all about. And so then it's for me to decide what they need to learn in the moment about themselves. And usually that's let them work hard and learn that lesson. And then we can talk about it. But sometimes it's flowing McFlow and they're super chill and curious and adventurous, but not going bonkers. And so the balance is determined by the individual that's in front of me. I don't determine the balance. My job is to let them learn something about themselves and learn something about the martial art. And then beyond that, I'm not trying to teach them an armbar, as it were.
Yes, indeed. She does clarify here, not only REBJJ, but how do you nix outcome biases in beginners when it comes to injuries and other pitfalls?
Well, I did roll with a guy just recently before I went out to Operation Pegasus Jump. It was his first time on the mats, and I encouraged him to step onto the mats for the first time. And so, as I described it to him, was I explained, do you have any injuries? Do you have any concerns? Have you ever been in fights or uncomfortable situations before, and you'd like to process some of that stuff, etc. And then, this is how taps work, and if you feel uncomfortable, you're gonna blah blah blah. But then I said, okay, and now to it the level of soreness that you are tomorrow or 48 hours from now, however sore you're going to be, is all you're doing. If you want to be sore over the next 48 hours, work hard. Or if you want to just really enjoy your day on the mats and not wake up hardly able to get out of bed, don't be scrappy. Don't fight. Just play. Let's play. And if we can play together on the mat, then you're not going to be as sore tomorrow if as opposed to you trying to fight me on the mats, because that isn't going to work out well for you. You're going to be really really sore. So I'm explaining to you right now, you get to decide how sore you are 48 hours from now. So be smart and dial back the pace.
Those are great points. Absolutely. I would I like to take day oneers on personally as my own uh as my own little task. And I like to match, as you said, match what they give me. So if they want to be scrappy, then it gets pretty scrappy, but there's always a level of control around that. I don't like giving a day oneer off to somebody else unless they've proven they're cool, I guess. I can't think of another way to put it right now, but like Matt and I rolled for 2 or 3, I think 2 rounds, and then I passed him off to the other purple belt, and then he started just mingling with the rest of the crew. So it was, by the time he had gotten through myself and Rob, I had no issues allowing him to work with with the other white belts where it can get scrappy quickly because there's no control, if you know what I mean.
But that's
So
important. I mean, like, when someone steps onto the mat for the first time, BJJ isn't just highly technical, highly skilled, fluidized martial arts. BJJ is also that white belt who's only been on the mats for 3 months. And so they're two completely different styles of BJJ. But I think that everyone should get to experience the level if they can the first night. So I think it's good that he got passed off to some white belts. And it's probably good that those white belts were a tiny bit scrappy and a pretty jerky and kind of, or janky, I should say. And, that I think that it's good for first timers to experience beautiful flow and janky flow so that they see the bandwidth of what is possible for them in the future.
Okay. Matt, you got any thoughts so far?
Yeah. I personally, when I'm introducing a new dude, right, and I want to take us away from BJJ because
For sure.
yeah, I got like 1 day of experience. When it comes to the kitchen and something, a new person comes in, right? Giving them a mission and a task is a good way to assess where they are. Like if they can't even pick up a knife, or they can't hold a knife properly, well then okay, I got to start at the very base level, basics, right? But if they pick it up right and they got the proper grip, they got their cutting board down with their anti-slide, they're on their slippery pad on the bottom, that kind of thing, and they kind of know what they're doing, they're all prepping and stuff like that. Okay, the mission gets a little bit more difficult, a little bit more task orientated, right? Before the restaurant closed down, we actually had some of the additional staff from Nate come through, and these are like the wood shop, these are mechanics, these are welders and stuff. They haven't, they cook at home and that's about it. And we were doing a full 4-course lunch dinner for them, right? And they were prepping and helping with everything else. And it was they were doing all the sauces and they were doing all the prep and stuff like that. And it got to the point where the individual I was shadowing, I literally left and was like, okay, you got this to do. I've seen you kind of work and you got kind of an idea what you're doing. I'm going to go be over here doing these tasks, but I've always was keeping an eye on them, always coming back and checking in on them. So it's really the individual that you're working with, and it has to be adjusted for that individual. But if they're capable, yeah, I got zero problem giving them free reign, but it has to be a mission. It has to be a goal orientated outcome for them to succeed, but also for you to assess them that they're exceeding.
I like that.
Yeah, I think one thing that I don't want to look past or bypass is what I'm hearing from you, Matt, is the same on a BJJ mat as it is in a kitchen, as it is anywhere for me. You assess the individual in front of you, try to determine what the outcome is that they want, but safety and security of the people on my team come first and foremost. So if I see someone pick up a knife wrong, I'm not going to send them off to the corner with a sharp knife and say, cut all the carrots. I'm going to get them on another task. And so that's the same with the BJJ mats. If someone shows up and they're a freaking lunatic, I'm not just going to pawn them off to a couple of white belts and watch them get all janked up because someone doesn't know how to play the game properly. So it's our job as leaders, either on the mat or in the kitchen or in live, to make sure that we're encouraging growth. We're setting someone up for the opportunity to explore and learn more about themselves, but not at the cost of their own safety or the team's safety.
Great. And that's where having that end goal, that mission, really helps out, because then they can assess and you can assess them at the end too. Like, yeah, you were a lunatic on the mat, or yeah, you can't cut carrots, save your life. Maybe we'll go for, unwrapping stuff. But yeah, that assessment is needed both for the individual and for you to also improve them.
Yeah, it's a let's talk about some personal day ones then, when from the other side of it. I mean, we're talking about it from more of a leadership role, looking at day oneers. Let's dive into when we were day oneers, and when they first stepped onto the ground in Wainwright, Shaun, or when you first stepped into the coffee shop as an owner. Like, they're all different day ones. They all have their own little nuances too. But did you find that all of your day ones were similar in terms of how you manage them, or is it like a kind of a free for all?
Well, I think that there's an important distinction here. It's a great question, and we'll get into it for sure. There is an important distinction, and that is the things that I've stepped into as a first timer. I've been comfortable stepping into it as a first timer and not requiring anyone to mentor me or shape me or guide me or teach me or lead me. I'm really comfortable stepping into something as a brand spanking white belt and sorting it out by myself. And so I think that's a real important difference between how I'm comfortable with figuring out the void in absence of help versus someone who's stepping into the void and needs help. And that can have a lot to do with a person's character makeup. It can have a lot to do with how they were raised. It can have a lot to do with how often or not they've been in a team or not, or it really depends on the individual. And some people just aren't prepared or aren't comfortable to step into the pitch black of the new thing and freaking own it. And so maybe the first thing we can start talking about is the difference between not having any direction in front of you on day one, or not having a leader next to you on day one, versus the opposite, which is on day one, you've got a black belt, for lack of a better term, to guide you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a good distinction.
And so what do you guys think?
Matt, what do you think? Putting you on the fire.
Yeah. I don't know. Like no, I got nothing this one. Chance, you go and let me think about this one for a second.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the distinction that I can bring up in my mind when I have just started something on my own and tried to figure it out versus being guided down a path is basically the expectation of progress. So when I start something, say BJJ, when I first started, I knew that there was going to be an instructor there. I knew there was going to be a black belt there. I knew there was going to be other students there. There were people that I was going to learn from, and there was going to be a linear style progression, right? Versus when I first started training on my own and I had no idea what I was doing. I just started stuffing weight into a backpack and started walking before I joined the army. Or when I would just start running and I had no idea about distance or time or all those things. I had no expectation of progress. I just would saw what happened, iterate, and do it again. Whereas with guidance or instruction, I find I have an expectation that I'll get taught what I need to get taught as it goes, if that makes sense. Matt, what do you think?
I'm more of a why person. Like, I think it's just my personality, right? But I like to know why things are happening. So when someone comes up and actually describes, okay, this is how you do this thing, I'm either going to ask the whys, and that's got me in a lot of trouble a lot of times. Or I'll go and actually research and find out for myself why such a thing is done in that way. Learning on myself, I've rely on a mentor or other person is something I've just never really had experience with other than in the military. And even then it was like I had to see the why. And I've had good mentors where they're like, okay, I'll pull you aside after we do this and we'll talk about the why. And then it made sense, it clicked and everything went. But for learning on myself, yeah, you're 100% right. Where you cannot see the whys unless you have outside input, and that can be a mentor or that could be additional self-research or experiences from someone else, like talking and stuff.
Shaun, what do you think?
Well, I did put up a little video just the other day, and it is from myself and Keegan, my youngest son, our youngest son, rolling on the BJJ mats. We rolled for about half an hour, and it was a good roll. I just captured the last 15 minutes of it and threw it up on the interwebs. However, this is the important part to what I put up. It wasn't about the Keegan and I just playing around on the mats. It was about the text that I applied against it, and it's probably relevant, so I'm going to read it out. Here we go. Apply enough pressure to create growth rather than fear. Allow enough space for movement and exploration. Construct interesting exit and entrance pathways to encourage new thought patterns and sequences. Playfully manipulate energy, velocity, and vectors in the now to demonstrate the potential bandwidth of the now. Just a few of the lessons that can be applied on the mats and in life. And so, BJJ in a kitchen, whatever you want to pull up as the subject to matter, I think that there are some universal ways to teach yourself. And I think there's some universal ways to teach others. It's our job to figure out how we best operate. I like to learn things by myself. I like to make the mistakes by myself. I don't need a mentor, shaper, guide, black belt. I don't need these things. I need to figure it out by myself, and I need to make the mistakes myself, and I need to pursue in a way that works for me. So I am different than a lot of other people, but it's our job to figure out who we are and what best works for us, and then pursue that as we're
Mhm.
starting off in a white belt.
That's a good point. The I think one of the real tricks, at least in day ones, as you said, is knowing yourself, but really understanding why you're there. I mean, we say this all the time that the why is important, but I was thinking about day one basic training when I first got to Saint Jean. The I had absolutely no doubt in what I was doing. I had so the level of anxiety or the level of um, consternation, whatever word you want to use, was mitigated a lot of it, but just due to the fact that I knew why I was there and I was 100% in. I was all in. Here we go. Let's get it. Um, Later on, in other things that I've gotten into, there was a lot of trepidation because I didn't really know why I was there. It was more of a, this could be cool. Let's try it out. And so there was more anxiety involved versus um, my day one going into BJJ. I stepped in, I did the thing, I came off the mats after that, and I was like, yes, I'm in. But beforehand, because I wasn't 100% sure as to why I was doing it, there was some anxiety. And I think that's a big part of it is that if you're gonna step onto a day one, that you gotta know why you're doing it, at least to avoid some of the anxiety. What do you guys think? Yeah.
I would say so. Yeah. And even like it doesn't have to be like a solidified why, but like this is a stepping stone to the end goal, which is the why. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Um, like in the military, like there was this one time it was on the jump course, right? And I had a friend who was behind me, and he really wanted his wings. Like all he talked about was like, "I'm going to be a jumper," blah blah blah. I'm scared of heights. Literally in the plane, and the JMs are like, you know what? If you can't go, just raise up your hand. We'll pass you by. Throw everyone else out the plane. So that's cool. Green light, go. And all I could think on my head was, I got to get out of this plane. I got to get out of this plane because the guy behind me he wants to jump. He wants to jump. I got to get out of this plane. So the reason my why in that moment wasn't to get my own wings or wasn't to you know, get out of the plane and jump. It was actually the other guy behind me that I wanted to get out of the plane because he wanted to succeed too as well. Um, I think the whys are very it's you I like having the whys. I think the whys are very important but sometimes the whys are not forefront in the initial planning. It literally something that gets developed as the situation happens in itself.
Hmm. John, any thoughts?
I agree. And I found myself in that exact same position on my basic parachutist course. And as it turns out, I was top candidate. And because I was top candidate, that you're the first one out of the bird on the very first parachute jump for the course. And so I found myself in that door with the 2 minute mark and staring out into space and thinking, this is the very last place I want to be right now, number one in the door. And so there was a lineup of guys behind me that were counting on me to go out the door. There was JMs, that jump masters, that were hovering next to me who were counting on me going out the door. One of the reasons that I was in the door is because they thought I was going to go out that door without any hesitation. And I was going to go out that door without any hesitation. But in my head, I had all kinds of hesitations. And one of the reasons that got me out that door was the team behind me. I knew that if I froze, that everyone else would freeze. And it was made very clear to me before we loaded onto the bird or onto the plane that I have to jump because in the past, whether this is true or not, this is what the jump master instructors were telling me. In the past, the guy in the door has frozen and the entire plane refused to jump. And I was like, what? I'm not going to be that guy. And so there are external factors or motivators that can obligate us to engage in the process that's directly in front of us, even though we don't want to. And that is really a shining example of this podcasting thing. If it was just me wanting to podcast out to the world because of Shaun, forget about it. Podcasting is done. I'm dead to that. But I'm doing it because of the team. And every day that I podcast, every day that I podcast, I think the same thing. I don't want to podcast, but I do podcast because I know the team expects it. They want it. They demand it. And I know that it's good for all of us. It's good for me. The process that I don't want to engage in is the process that is good for me. So, day one, sometimes it's for you, but mostly it's for the team, I think.
I like that a lot. I got a great question from Tanya here. You guys got any thoughts on anything we've gone over so far? No? Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Tanya asks, what were examples of you realizing the seemingly pointless day one wax on, wax off lessons your mentors were actually brilliant? That's a good one. I got a great example, but if you guys...
Go ahead, buddy.
Okay. This is actually from high school and the military and stuff like that. One of the things I thought was absolutely pointless was algebra and trigonometry and all these things in math. And I was like, what is the point? Why am I being taught this? I'm never going to use this. This is absolute garbage. This is not happening. Fast forward to my fives course. We were doing a class and we needed to figure out what the volume of a cone was. And who remembered how to do algebra and how to do basic trigonometry? This guy. And in that moment, while I was actually teaching the rest of my class how to find the area of a triangle and how to find, all these things, it hit me that I owed my teacher an apology. Because I remember in those moments sitting there going like, this is useless, up until I was actually teaching it later to somebody else. And that was just one kind of humorous story, but a really good example of the seemingly pointless day one wax on, wax off things. Somebody came up with it in class in BJJ class it's easier if you do it right. And we were kind of giggling about it like, yeah, ha ha ha, it's easier if you do it right. But everything in BJJ is easier if you do it correctly. And it blew my mind when I finally was able to put that into practice and go, yes, 100%. Matt, you got any thoughts?
I do have a story about from the mentor side and someone doing the whole aha moment thing. It was a basic military qualification course, right? The B&Q. And since day one, you're always doing push-ups, but then I was known as the guy who liked doing burpees. And we started like 2, 3, 4, 5. We ended up doing burpees with the rifle, on the back of your hand, kind of jazzio. And then we started doing burpees, one-handed burpees, right? Left and then right, kind of bring it up to it. Anyways, several weeks later, we're getting ready for the range. And your fire movement drill, you get down with your rifle, right? And it is basically a one-handed burpee with the rifle in the other hand. We're doing some exercises. Okay, everyone do a burpee. Everyone do a left, right. Okay, now everyone with your rifle in your hand, do a one-handed burpee. Boom. And like six out of the students, the rest were just really mad. But 6 out of the instructors, they're like, you've been training us since day one to do this. And it's like, yeah, because we're going to the rifle and we're going to rifle range and we're going to start shooting. So it was interesting to see like their faces just like lit up and was like, he has not been punishing us the entire time. He's been giving us physically trained to do this one-handed because it's going to be necessary. And that even came back a few years later with one of those 6 students. They came up and it's like, dude, like, I can't believe you were doing that for like weeks before we even got there. It's like, yeah, what we do.
Setting people up. I like it. Shaun, what do you think?
First thing that comes to mind on a wax on, wax off basis is I was an Army cadet, but not just an Army cadet, boys, a combat engineer. Well,
Chimo.
before you
Oh,
guys.
wow.
Well, before you guys. And so I was at an Army cadet camp in Vernon for 6 weeks. And one of the big deal moments in Army cadet camp in Vernon is who has, believe it or not, who has the shiniest parade boots. And right at the end of the 6 week program, they have a freedom of the city where, the city mayor comes and inspects all the troops and yada, yada, yada. So for about 6 weeks, you're polishing your boots. And one of the instructors who, no pun intended, took a shine to me, he convinced me that you could use a certain type of wax on your boots to give them that extra bit of shine. And I bought into it and I really honed my art of boot polishing because I have a competitive nature and because he'd informed me that he wanted the team to win, our section to win, our platoon to win, our company to win. And all I could think was Roger that. So I started getting after it. And the day of the parade, the big sunset ceremony parade, I was sick, and they wouldn't let me out on the parade because I was so sick. They made me lay in my bed, but he said, "Hey, listen, can one of the guys, the guy who was my bunkmate, can he wear your boots on the parade for the team so that we can get the win?" I said, "Sure." So as I was laying in my bed at attention, all the rest of the troops are out there for the big grand parade, and guess whose boots won? My boots, except they're on another guy's feet. And so he's up there doing the big salute. He gets the handshake. He gets his photo taken with the commanding officer and all of that good stuff. It's in the paper. And meanwhile, I'm laying at attention in the bed while some dude's wearing my boots. So what was the point I learned? I learned that it's my job to do my best. It's my job to kick that ass. And if someone else benefits from that, if the team benefits from it, well, I'm okay with that. So that was a pretty early lesson for me for sure.
That's a great lesson to learn early too. uh, Winterstorm makes this comment about your story, Matt. That's the only time someone's face lit up regarding burpees.
That's true.
100%.
Sure.
I do really like this thought pattern though, because I think it's really important to be able to look back on the lessons that you've learned, when you learn them, how you learn them, why you learn them, that kind of stuff. Not only in beneficial moments of like, oh, it all makes sense now, but things that you screwed up, things that you did poorly, and to be able to look back on it and go and apply the lesson now and go, oh, of course, of course. And I think back to when before I got posted to Meaford while I was still in 1CR, and I was really bitter and angry and upset that I wasn't getting courses and upset that I wasn't getting this and that and the other thing, and no one was giving me the love, right? And I realized it was all on me. And it was based off of all of the lessons that people had been trying to tell me along the way, but it wasn't until I was out and um, in the world as a veteran that I actually was able to learn them and then look back and apply them and go, right, that's where I screwed that up. That's where I screwed that. Okay, I won't do that again. And I think that's we look back as these wax on, wax off lessons of mentors that were like, oh, this is great to know. But sometimes it's when you stick your foot in your mouth and go, ooh, that was not smart.
Well, there is something interesting there. You maybe got lucky that you came to those realizations. Maybe you talked to a guy recently and he explained to you how you were kind of doing it wrong. Who knows? Who cares? But the point remains that at some point, you may be lucky enough to learn the lesson, or
Mhm.
you may not. I know a lot of guys who haven't learned the lessons that they need to learn because either they haven't put enough thought into it, enough reflection into it, they haven't sat next to a dude who says, "Bro, are you even kidding me right now? You botched that so hard, and I'm going to explain to you why." So if you never get any of that, maybe you're just rolling through life thinking that there's not much to learn by reflecting back on your life. There's not much to learn about how you could have done things better. Maybe you just think that you've run a really good program. Well, that is interesting because if you are in a game and you're botching it, you're probably being told that you're botching it. But then eventually people get tired of saying you're botching it. And then they just leave you to your own devices, or at least I do. And I kind of do a 3 strike rule. I'll give you 3 strikes. And if you strike out 3 times, now you're on your own. See you later. Good luck. Because I don't have the time or the patience to put up with someone who just keeps striking out because they won't listen, because they won't apply themselves. And so, Chance, maybe when you were screwing up back in the day, you were told a bunch of times that you were screwing up, and through either your arrogance or your ignorance or your ego, you refused to listen. And then guys just let you keep screwing up, and you got out as a screw up. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So it's not the system's fault to eternally try to fix you. It's your responsibility to try and eternally fix yourself. And the moment that you open your eyes up to folks who are saying, bro, do better. If you ignore that, well, there's only so many times you're going to hear it until people leave you to dangle in the wind. Now, I'm not talking to Chance specifically. I'm talking to the internet specifically. If you're not hearing guys say to you, "Hey, man, you're really blowing that." If you haven't heard that for a while, maybe it's just because they got tired of telling you it too many times and you ignoring it. It's just food for thought.
Yeah,
I like that.
100%. Matt, you got any thoughts on that?
No, I like that. That's very true. I mean, I see it all the time in the workplace too, where people are trying to help other people, and then they just give up on them because they can't, and they're in their own little bliss, doing their own little bliss things, thinking they're top dog, doing everything right, but in reality, that people have just given up on them because they've been holding back the team so much.
Mm-hmm. There's a great line. I think it was from Jocko or Leif Avon or something like that. They were talking about if you're so great, why aren't you winning? And I think it was one of those lines that really like struck home of like, oh, it was actually like, if I really believe that I'm that awesome, why is all of this happening? Why isn't it going the way that I want it to? Because I'm the common denominator in all of these issues, right? If I can't get along with this guy, and I can't get along with this guy, and I can't get along with this guy, and I'm not getting any courses, or I'm not doing the things I want to, where's the common denominator? Right? If it's not 5 or 6 people all thinking the same way, there's probably one reason for it. And so it took me a while to learn that. As you said, Shaun, I was screwing up. I was not doing the things that I wanted to do. And it was because of the fact that I was all pumped up on myself, and I couldn't understand why I wasn't kicking ass. Because I wasn't kicking ass at all. And it's kind of humorous to look back on it now and look at those lessons and go, man, had I done X, Y, and Z, I would have been able to get what I wanted.
Yeah,
But I didn't do that.
If you could have just listened.
Yeah.
Just listened instead of thinking that you were the one who had to be doing all the talking. You're the person who's supposed to be doing the most listening.
Yeah.
And I've been there myself. I mean, like what hard charging guy with some kind of ego hasn't at some point thought that they've got it figured out? And it's right about that time that you should be saying, "Oh, I don't think I do have it figured out," if I'm thinking that I got it figured out. I think that we all suffer from this sort of moment from time to time. But the moment that you have a few moments like that, you can form the pattern and realize that I'm slipping into that little trap, and you can counter that little trap and get on. And over a period of time, over maybe decades, you can refine the understanding of the trap so that you barely get your toe in it before you realize, forget about it. That ain't going to happen. And I think that's the case with every day one activity, whether it's BJJ or fly fishing or making pizzas. It doesn't much matter what it is. On day one, you know that you know nothing. And then by day 10, the honeymoon phase, we'll call it, where you're all giddy and excited, all of a sudden you invented BJJ, or they named the pizza after you, or whatever the case is, because we start to get excited about the process. We start to get excited about the tiny little outcomes that we're having, and we take that and conflate it into, now I'm large and in charge. I've been making pizza for 10 days. Look at me go. Maybe they'll rename Italy Shaun because of my awesome pizza-ness. Well, that's just not how the world works, but that's how we can spin it in our heads sometimes. Unless you've made a boatload of similar mistakes and realize the pattern, then you really have to start paying attention to the other people who are making pizzas next to you and giving you the sound advice that you're not listening to very carefully. Just, close your mouth and open up your ears and pay attention to the experience around you. They'll help you move out of the honeymoon phase and understand the length of the project that you're in before you actually become large and in charge.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, you got anything to add to that?
Not really. I mean, the Shaun Coliseum in Rome would be kind of cool, but I mean, other than that, no, we're good.
Do what you can. I really like how you put that though, Shaun. I think that the concept of there's a conceptual leap that people make once you get kind of used to what's happening, right? You're making pizzas, you're 10 days in, you have the general concept of how to do it. And you're like, okay, cool, I can make any pizza in the world, which is technically perhaps correct, but in no way correct whatsoever. And it takes a lot of levels and a lot of depth and a lot of training to get to a certain level where you can then go, oh, you know what? I could actually make any pizza in the world. The clarity, I think, comes when you start to remove yourself from the equation. So you're starting to allow the pizza to be made rather than I'm making this pizza. And I just think yeah, I'm formulating that thought in my head as we go. So I'm going to come back to it.
Okay, I'm
I'll
going to
just
jump in then while you're formulating.
Okay.
I think like a good. Let's go back to the pizza reference, right? Yeah, 10 days. Yeah, I can make any pizza. Yeah, sure. I mean, that's good. You know the basics, but then that's now once you get those basics done, and I think that's what a lot of people got to understand is like the basics. Um, that's when you get to actually to express and learn more detailed specialization and stuff like that, right? Like, do you want to make a pizza pepperoni style, or do you want to do it, traditional style or flatbread? Like, there's so many specialization, but once you learn the basics, that's just the start. Like, you cannot. That's your day one. The day one is when you learn the very basics, and then you can start exploring for yourself, right? Like today with BJJ, I mean, that was my first day, and I can honestly say I've done BJJ. I showed up, I rolled around on the mats for a bit. I technically did a first day BJJ. I am no way anywhere near proficient, and I won't even kid myself or anything like that. And now it's time for me to start specializing, start learning more, right? Learning which place I want to go to, who I want to roll with, right? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses, right? And how do I adapt and overcome with those?
Shaun?
Yeah, so sticking with the pizza thing, I will say that my family bugs me at least once a month, but more often once every couple of weeks. Hey, Dad, why don't you make a pizza again? Because I was into pizza making for about 3 years. And to Matt's point, there is a fundamental level of knowledge, technique, and skill set that you is required to make traditional Italian pizza, and that's what I was pursuing. And I started putting out some pretty good pizzas to the degree where I was skilled enough making pizza, all from scratch, of course, that now I was starting to express my artistry within the pizza. I was starting to explore the soulfulness of pizza. I was trying to put across to my family the soul of a pizza. And once I reached that level, I knew that I was on the precipice of having to make a binary decision. One was, am I going to become the best pizza maker in the world, for lack of a better term? Or am I going to have to redirect my time into another hobby because I can see how deep this rabbit hole is? And I don't want to go where that's going to go. I don't want to own my own Italian restaurant sometime in the future. So I it's not that I abandoned pizza making, but I have put it on the shelf because I know myself and how deeply I will pursue a passion like pizza. And so here's my point. My family again reminds me from time to time that they'd love for me to start making pizza again. And isn't that the way of the world? You know, you find your thing, you've got your jam, you're into it, you start learning how to love on it, you start becoming passionate and expressing the soulfulness of it. And then someone slides up next to you and says, "Hey, can I get 10 pizzas from you?" And what do you do with that? Do you engage now? Now do you have a business? Now are you not focused on the soul? Now are you focused on the commodity? There's lots of interesting ways that we could tease apart the pizza metaphorically. And I would just say this, that I know myself, and everyone should get a better sense of their self in respect to day one turns into day 10, and then day 10 turns into day 1,000. And if you know yourself well enough, you'll understand how that general trajectory should shape out for you. And if you're like me, be careful what you put yourself into.
That's an important point. Is be careful of what you put yourself into, because you can destroy your love of something if you overdo it or you dive too far into it. Shaun, you were talking about there was your last 24-hour race where it was just bonkers, ridiculous, hot and flat, and you were like, if I don't stop now, I'm gonna never gonna mountain bike ever again. That can happen very
That's right.
easily if you push yourself too far on that.
Yeah, you've got
Any
to
other?
know
Yeah,
you've
go ahead.
not own. It's not that you have to know your own limits. You have to know your own, for lack of a better term, breaking point in respect to ruining the hobby,
Hmm.
ruining the art, ruining the pastime, ruining the trajectory, ruining your love of life to some degree by just pushing too hard blindly. And so, in that moment, that Chance was referring to, it was a world championship down in California. At that point, when I realized what the remainder of the 24-hour solo race was going to be and how much I was going to hate on it, the binary decision was I've got to quit now and continue loving mountain biking, or I'm going to finish this race, crack out towards that podium, and hate on it so much that by the time it's done, I'll want to burn my bike. And so I think, irrespective of how many races you've done or how much skin in the game you've got, and at that point, I had a lot of skin in that game. You've just got to make the right decision, even though it's a decision that you're not comfortable making, which was quit. I ain't a quitter, and especially not in that sport. I'm not known as it, and I don't like being known as it, but we have to face up to the reality of the moment and can't stick our heads in the sand and pretend that this is a binary moment that I have to carefully choose now for the longevity of my passion or my hobby.
Hmm. 100%. Matt, you got any thoughts on this before I do some comments
Nope,
here?
we're good.
Okay. Winter Storm kicks in with this comment. I think it's fantastic. It says, in training, we were always given impossible tasks. If we somehow accomplished them, the facilitators cut the time and resources until we failed. I realized it was learning to do it anyway, even when you can't win. I used to do this as an instructor. Matt used to do this to us when you were an instructor. Yeah, I think he's absolutely hit the nail on the head. Is doing it anyway to the best of your ability, regardless of the outcome. What do you think, Shaun?
I think that in life, there needs to be no win scenarios and there needs to be no fail scenarios. And then there needs to be all of the stuff in between. And when it is win or no win, the most important person in that moment is the person learning and not the person who's shaping it. Uh, I've said it before, not too many times, but there isn't a man on this planet that I can't crack. I'll break anyone on this planet if someone tells me to break them. Everyone's breakable. That's freaking guaranteed. But why you've got to understand, why are you breaking them? Why are you shaping them? Why are you in the position that is there to create a new version of a person, and how best to do that? Well, sometimes you got to make them bleed. Sometimes you got to make them cry. Sometimes you got to pat him on the back, and sometimes you got to kick him in the arse. There's lots of different ways that you can lead a person to shape them or break them. As long as you've been in the game long enough and you understand the overarching mission outcome, which is create awesome people or select awesome people, then as a good instructor or as a good mentor, a leader or a guide, you'll do it right. But you'll never do it as right as you could have until you've been around others that know how to do it right. They've learned the lessons that you maybe don't have to learn in order to impart lessons on others.
Yeah. Matt, you got any thoughts?
I'm good.
You're good. Okay, going to carry on with some other comments here. Tanya says, art school taught me that the worst feedback you can get is silence.
Wow, I got some silence on my work that I put up this morning, Tanya. Where was the love? I put up 60 images of digital art, Ninja Samurai Miyamoto.
I really enjoyed them.
Where's the love, Tanya? Is that the worst feedback? Am I getting silent?
Well, you're not in art school, so maybe
true,
that's part of it.
Maybe that's never has been. So there's that.
Yeah, I have to say those are really slick.
I think
I really do. I really like them. I just was flipping through them before I came in here and started up, and they were really cool.
I'm not fishing for a compliment. I'm just teasing Tanya.
Oh, I know, but a compliment is well deserved because they are excellent. Tanya then carries on, says, at Winterstorm, cutting out tiny paper letters by hand in art school for a graphic design poster made us very intentional about what we made because we had to do it all by hand. That's a good lesson. That is a great lesson, 100%. Any thoughts on that?
Whether it's by hand or whether it's by machine or whether it's by imagination, it just doesn't much matter. What is the lesson is hard, focused, disciplined work. Something that takes a while, something that you really have to pour yourself into. It could be creating 1,000 tiny little dots on a chalkboard and being very precise in the spacing. If that's the task that you're given and you're giving it your best, at the end of it, there's a lesson in there. You became better while you were doing it, but there's a lesson. It's for you to figure out what the lesson was. So, yeah, I think there's many ways you can get good lessons.
I like that. Matt,
I agree with that one. Yeah. I think it's fundamentally very important that you actually learn the basics before you proceed to something more technical. An example for myself is that we, in culinary school, year one, we learned how to laminate dough by hand, right? Rolling it out, folding in the butter, fold the dough, roll it out again, right? But then year two, we actually had the laminator and we learned how to use a machine to do the same job in 5 minutes that took us like 3 hours. So the laminator always broke. So we always ended up doing it by hand anyway. So we knew how the very basic fundamentals, which I think that is so important for, being able to function. And it goes back to that whole failing point comment too. Hence the reason why I kind of pushed that one off, is that if you know the fundamentals or the root basics of something, you can always go back and it's no longer a failed task. Laminator went down. Okay, let's get out the rolling pins and start doing it. We know how to do it. So I agree that, the fundamentals of the whole thing has to be learned before you get more into the technical.
Yeah. Matt, you may not be aware of this, but I did do some fundamental training in culinary school when I was a young man. It was called Peel Those Potatoes at 4:30 in the morning, Taylor.
Yeah, here's 3 bags. Go. All right.
That's a good lesson to learn too. We got one more from Tanya. She says that Picasso said it took him the rest of his life to learn to draw like a child again. What were examples of you guys returning to your day ones, and what subtleties were revealed to you? It's a good question right for the end, but go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I think so. One thing I've been kind of like developing for myself is being more childlike, and less, not to be confused with childish, but more childlike. Children have this thing where they're all awe and discovery and looking and learning and growing, right? And I found that as an adult, and especially going like a rigid organization like the armed forces and school, where it's like, you're fixed on this path, I couldn't see the development or growth that I had potentially there. So I am learning again to be childlike in discovery of new things and awe and learning and developing new skills and tasks. That's why I'm like 6,000 different projects at once right now, trying to learn everything I can, make up for lost time.
I like it. Shaun, what do you think?
Well, I think that I'll use BJJ as an example because it's kind of how we started off, and that is I've been rolling for about 8 years now, and I can still find ways to and encourage a childlike curiosity in myself. And how I do that is by rolling with my eyes closed, or more importantly, and I think this is truer to who I am, I can find ways to return to my day one by seeing it through the eyes of a day oneer. So I do enjoy taking a day one person onto the mats and basically living through their eyes and guiding their eyes in a way that is best for them in that moment. And so I get to relive day one through others' day ones, which is kind of like what I'm doing over here in podcasting to some degree, what we're doing in podcasting to some degree. All of these subjects that we're talking about, we are literally reliving these ideas. We are forming day one ideas about the subject of day one because maybe we have never thought about them before. We're in real time creating the novel day one thought process about day one. And in so doing, we are encouraging others to think about their day one. So, in essence, what we are doing through talking about day one while trying to think day one, encouraging others to think day one, it's a weird little triple inception that we could probably spend a bit more time talking about.
Day oneception right there. I was thinking while you were talking was that this kind of just clicked in my head was the fact that each day can be a day one if you look at it through the eyes of a day oneer. And if you can take your mind back to that moment when you first started and you were just wide open, okay, what do we got? Right. And just rolling with the punches, so to speak, or being able to flow into that moment a little bit more openly, and allowing, especially on the BJJ mats, this is one thing that I've been working on a lot, is allowing my body to do the things that it needs to do instead of forcing my body to do the things that I think it should be doing, allowing it to happen. And so for myself, to answer this question, this is something that I've been doing over the last maybe week or two, is returning to my concept of day one each and every day. So when I hit the mats, I'm looking at it through those eyes of a day oneer of, all right, let's see what today brings us, and diving into it rather than expecting things to happen the way I want them to. If that makes any sense. We got one more comment here, and then we'll do a quick final thought, and then we'll shut her down for the day. But Winterstorm has a fantastic point to finish this off with. He says, we were taught that you didn't lose because you failed. You lose because you gave up. And I think that's a great concept to bring into day one, is that failure isn't the issue. Not trying is the issue. So if you go in and you try on your day one, that's a win in my books. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you fail, I mean, you don't know what the outcome is after that. Like if you like shut her down, done, right? But if you do see the like a certain thing, like Shaun's example with his mountain biking race, right? I don't think he would think that's a failure. I think that was a solid win for him. But others may say, yeah, he's given up a career. Yeah, it's all perspective, and it's how you feel inside what's a win for you.
Mhm.
In that day one could be just saying to the day ones. I think day ones are a very important tool, and I like what you're saying, Chance, how every day is a day one and relearning, observing it as a day one.
Mm-hmm. Shaun, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, when on day one, the moment that my eyes open in bed, that's my new day. And every day is a new day in my books. I think I've said that in the past in podcasts. And in respect to, you didn't lose because you failed, you lose because you gave up, unless you understand that by giving up, you gain, you win, as Matt said. And that's something that is difficult to understand until you've failed enough and won enough that you can ascertain what's important in that moment for you. If you've never won or never failed, how do you even address those two things against each other, the dichotomy of them, as it were? And so I just have failed so much and won enough times that I understand or appreciate what both of them bring. And for me, in my phase of my life now, I prefer to fail rather than win. I learn the most from failing. It actually lights more of a fire under my arse. The moment that I win, it's not that it's disappointing, but it's not as infuriatingly challenging as when I fail
Yeah.
in such a way that I will set the record straight.
I like that. Okay, let's get some final thoughts on day one. Anything else we've talked about? The mats? Anything? Matt?
Mats, but Mats. Good
Matt's
day.
mats?
Really loved it. It was a great day one. I mean, no, I think like again, day ones are very, very important, and recognizing that every day should be a day one because it's a fresh start on everything is very, very important, and a skill that needs to be learned, right? But I also agree with Shaun where I would rather take criticism versus compliments because compliments don't do anything, but criticism means I have a next level to achieve.
I like it. Shaun, final thoughts?
Yeah, we didn't get into it, so I'm just going to throw it in right here at the end. Maybe I should have entered into the conversation a bit earlier with it, but I think it's all our responsibilities to engage in as many day ones as we can. Get away from that one dimensional mindset, start focusing on that three-dimensional mindset. Like I've said in the past, podcasting is now my seventh career, and every single career was radically different from the career previous to it, which has built me into a person who is reasonably well rounded. And that's why I'm having some minor success in being able to talk about a boatload of topics that I'm no subject matter expert in, but I've had my finger in enough pies that I can usually hold a conversation about anything with anyone. And once you can demonstrate that to yourself or to those around you and have those really broad sweeping conversations based on being having a lot of new white belts tied around your waist, I think it's easier to communicate, it's easier to connect, and it's easier to lead through example by simply demonstrating a well-rounded life.
Yeah. Very, very true. And as you've said many times, tie on a new white belt. If you haven't tied on a new white belt in a little while, do so because you're going to learn stuff not only about the thing that you're learning, but you're going to learn tons of stuff about yourself. And once you can put those two things together, that allows you to build and grow into the person that you're meant to be. So you can do that with us here in the collective. We'll see y'all tomorrow. GMO.
Gmo.
Emo.